Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Made in Bartlett, a program dedicated to the primary industries of Bartlett. We're joined today with Joann Massey and Gerre Currie, who are going to talk about a topic that is dear to me and them as well, and that's economic development. We've had a program in the past talking about economic development from the state perspective and workforce perspective, but we're going to delve into local economic development activities. But before we do that, I want to introduce our two guests and let them tell you a little bit about themselves. So, Joann, I'm going to start with you.
All
Who
right.
are you?
I am Joann Massey, native Memphian, born, raised, and educated, and I love Shelby County. There's no better place to be in the whole entire world. I'm also the Vice President of Operations with EDGE. And so EDGE is the acronym for the Economic Development Growth Engine. We are the arm for economic development for Memphis and the entire Shelby County.
Great.
My name is Gerre Currie. I am the Community Development Officer for Financial Federal Bank. I also serve as Vice Chair for EDGE, and I am Chairman of the Inner City Economic Development Growth Engine as it relates to our ICE loans, which are small business loans that are really helping to retool and reignite this city.
Great. Well, but before we go any further, I need to mention the fact that this program is sponsored by First South Financial. They provide the underwriting for this program, and it would not be possible without them. And so we thank First South for supporting this podcast. Joann, you're a little bit modest because I'd like the folks to know your background. You've been in this the economic development arena, which we're going to delve into. But Joann, you've been in this business for quite some time. So why don't you give our viewers a little background about your past?
Sure. So, like I said, I love to say born, raised, and educated right here in Shelby County. I've also had some of my, best opportunities here. My background is in financial management, so a little company called Morgan Keegan, now Raymond James. I worked there in wealth management, associate vice president. And then someday, one how, I came upon economic development. And I've been doing economic development for about 25 years. I've served as a project manager, compliance officer, and I've worked with Governor Haslam with the state of Tennessee, economic and community development. And I also have worked in workforce and community development with our community college and our workforce system in our city. And
you also work for the city of Memphis, or OPD, Office of Planning and Development.
I did. I worked for the Office of Planning and Development before EDGE, our current system, was created. Served as the first compliance officer. So I would always say with clients, you see me on the front end and the back end on the accountability. And then I also worked with the city of Memphis, our last mayor, around small business and small business development.
Okay, well, quite a track record there.
Thank you, sir.
So, Gerre, let's go into your area now. You're community development for your organization. So, can you explain a little bit about what that means?
That means that I am the walking, talking individual for everything at that financial institution that occurs. Community development from a banking perspective is not quite the same as economic development. Banks are more focused on rebuilding and providing lending products and services to not only larger businesses, but small businesses to help startups and kind of keep them on track and providing financial literacy, the services that they need. So we provide a suite of services for small businesses. We also are engaged in housing. That's one of my passions, if you will. So I do a lot in the area of housing across the city and across the county, actually, to just help those individuals that have possibly been disinvested and disengaged in the process know and understand that there are organizations and businesses that really, really want to help.
Okay, good.
Well, John, if I could jump in there, Gerre's being pretty modest too, because in addition to her professional life and helping communities and changing lives, She has a very robust volunteer slate of leadership opportunities, not only in housing and improving the lives of women and children in our community, but also in addressing poverty in our community. So, she wears a crown under that very pretty hair. So
well, and of course, so it's very appropriate that you serve on the EDGE board, and we're going to talk a little bit more about. Well, we want to talk a lot about EDGE, but before we do that, we want to talk about the basics of economic development. Now, the viewers who have saw the previous podcast that we talked about economic development, basically, my definition of economic development is job creation. That's the bottom line. And of course, to make jobs happen, to create jobs, you have to have capital, which is money, which is where banks come in, obviously, and where EDGE comes in as well. And you got to have education or training, so that involves workforce. But the bottom line of economic development is job creation. So I just want to ask y'all, you want to add to that. Economic development, let me put it this way. If a community is not focused on growth, and I know there's a lot of people out there that sometimes feel like that growth is an impediment, but growth is not an impediment, because if a community is not focused on growing, then what's the alternative?
That's right.
Dying,
That's right.
basically. That's a crude way of putting it, but that's pretty true. But Joann, you've been doing this for quite some time, so let's get your perspective on economic development. Job creation, I think everybody agrees that's the bottom line.
Right.
But wealth development as well, because you just don't want to create minimum wage jobs. We're after good paying, livable jobs.
That's
okay.
right.
So that's the whole thing here, is trying to up the wealth for the entire community, not just a handful of folks, but everybody. So, the old saying, a rising tide raises all ships. So anyway, jump in, Joann.
Yeah, so John, I have been doing this for 25 years. And like I said, it was just a happen chance when I was in the trustee's office and I was managing their collections. I was legal supervisor, and the mayor at the time asked me if I was interested in taking a position in economic development, and I did. I said, what's that? And to your point about it being job creation, it is job creation. It is also in infrastructure investment, and it's revenue generation for a community. And so all of those things that you just talked about, the quality of life, improved education opportunities, addressing blight, economic development looks at and supports all of that. So coming out of the trustee's office, it was just a natural thing for me to be able to hone in onto strategies that help create revenue for our community. So for your listeners, that whole idea of, well, we're giving up something because we're giving away these incentives. No, we're getting back way more than we are giving up. And that is how economic development works.
Yeah, and let's talk about that cost benefit ratio that we'll get into a little bit more. But Gerre, you'd like to jump in and add a little bit more to your perspective on economic development and why it's important?
It is important, and I'll just parrot what Joann said. Economic development and community development are hand-in-hand partners that work in tandem to rebuild communities, to rebuild infrastructure, and just basically develop and recreate opportunities for everyone across the county.
Yeah.
So we talked about the previous podcast that we talked about economic development a little bit. We talked about the state's involvement in economic development. Now, the state plays a very important role. Joann actually worked for the state of Tennessee doing that, as I did. And we're both graduates of the state's Economic and Community Development Department. And Joann worked on the local level. I worked on the recruiting level from a statewide perspective. But local governments play a very, very important role in economic development, because really and truly the state, all they can do is lure a prospect, what we call a potential company looking in the area. They can lure them into the state but the actual selling of the state relies on local government. It's the local community that must do the final sale. Okay, so what role do you see local government taking in economic development?
Well, like you said, John, it is a very vital role that it's like, the state, as you know, a lot of projects, a lot of opportunities come through the state. And then the state sets them up to meet with the local governments, with the local teams. And it's really, up to us to close the deal.
Right.
It's up to us to showcase our community. And that's why, things like this, coming together and educating our community about what we do, is so important, because then they're able to understand why addressing blight and crime and all those things are important to attracting jobs and investments in our community. So for us, it's about selling the community. It's about closing the deal. It's about showcasing our resources, both our workforce, our quality of life. Bartlett is a great place to live that a lot of people do, and it's great for not just residential, but for also industry. So we are pretty much like the salesman, that close the deal and showcase what we can offer.
Yep. And EDGE is the tool, the primary tool, for Memphis and Shelby County. But let's talk about that. But before we do, let's look at a hypothetical situation. Let's suppose that you have a company that is looking to expand their operation. They have, say, let's just make up a number, $100 million investment, which is pretty substantial. They're going to hire 500 people. It's going to be very capital intensive, but they're going to need the labor as well. They're going to need semi to high skilled employees. And what they normally do is they send out RFPs or RFIs, requests for information, and they'll come through the state, and then and they'll give their parameters. They'll define what it is they're looking for in a community. And then the state, their responsibility is to send those RFPs out to the various communities in the state of Tennessee that matches their requirements or criteria. So let's say that this company, the state of Tennessee, has sent out the RFPs, and that comes to Shelby County, and the state will disseminate that to all the economic development agencies that are operating in Shelby County. So that means the Bartlett Chamber will get something, the Memphis Chamber, Collierville Chamber, and all of that. So then the problem is, the challenge is that we have to meet their requirements. So their requirements are land, if they want to build a facility, or they want an existing facility, they want to be close to the interstate, they want to be close to the airports. There's all, and they have to have so much water or power and that type of thing. So that eliminates a lot of companies, a lot of locations right there. But let's say that Shelby County has what they're looking for. And let's say that there's one location, and I'm not going to say where that location is because it's hypothetical, right? Well, let's just say that they've got one location here in Shelby County, and it happens to be in the city of Memphis. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I've just said it's going to be there. Sorry about that.
Okay, no, we're following you.
But it's the city of Memphis. So let's say the Memphis Chamber is working this project, and they're close to a deal. And because they've got everything, the site has everything, and the community has everything the company's looking for. But then the company says, okay, we've looked in 4 other locations in 4 other states, and they're willing to, they're encouraging us to locate in their towns with certain incentives. Mm-hmm. Okay, now that's where the competition comes in.
Right.
And I want you to tell our viewers how competitive this business is, right, because it is competitive. So we have a company. They're interested in a particular site, say in the city of Memphis, and the Memphis Chamber's done all they can with them. Now they turn them over to Edge, right? And this is where y'all come in.
Yeah.
So, Joann, can you walk us through the process?
Yeah. Well, and I want to first say, John, not just in the state of Tennessee, but across the country, Shelby County is usually a good spot for companies to locate because we have all that they are looking for. And I'm not just saying that because I'm Shelby County. It's true.
You're not being biased?
I'm a little bit, but I got proof. The proof is in the receipts.
Okay,
the proof is in the receipts.
Okay.
But really, when you talk about quality of life, cost of living, access, geographic location, we are superior to most places in the nation because of where we're located. And then there's this little company called FedEx. I'm sure you've heard of it. Yeah, I think you've heard of it. Yeah, I think you heard of it. But all of those things make us very attractive. And so it is up to us to close the deal. And we also have a system in place, not just the Bartlett Chamber, not just the Memphis Chamber, but we work together in tandem to locate projects here. And so what happens, a company simply fills out an application. It's not a long application. It's a list of some of those things that they've already told us that you mentioned about what they're needing, the investment, the number of jobs. We put that in a little calculator and we say, okay, for what you are providing, we can offer this incentive. And the incentive, the biggest tool that we have and the most used tool is the payment in lieu of taxes, the pilot. Now, that is not, and I want to be clear to your listeners when they hear me say this, the pilot is not a negative thing at all because each and every pilot has attached to it, and I know we're digging in deep here, so you stop me if this isn't where we want to go, but it has a cost-benefit ratio.
No, what you talking about?
Well, thank you, because 0 from 0 gets you 0.
That's right.
So you got to put something in, right? You got to put something in. But what we are here for, our board ensures that every cost-benefit ratio that we have more benefit than the cost that we're giving up. And if your listeners will think about it, this project we're talking about, if they don't locate here, if we don't provide the incentives to entice them, then those 500 jobs go where?
Yeah.
Right? So we need those jobs and want those jobs for our citizens. And you can look all around Shelby County and see the different companies. You've got Memphis Record Pressing coming up and going to be talking to them. If we had not provided the incentives, the jobs wouldn't be there. Where would people work? So after we receive that application, we do the cost-benefit ratio. Again, we're walking companies through this hand in hand. We take them to our board. We have a board meeting every third Wednesday or every last Wednesday of the month. And, the board hears it. We provide the proposal to the board. They review it. And 10 out of 10, we get the approval because we're ensuring that cost-benefit ratios.
Yeah, and if they don't, and the cost-benefit, you might want to explain the benefit because payment in lieu of taxes, okay, they're not having to pay their full taxes. Now, we could really get in the weeds and talk about why pilots are even necessary in Tennessee, but Tennessee's a unique state. Pilots is an instrument to sort of get around certain constitutional requirements about taxes, but the benefit, the cost-benefit analysis, it looks at the cost of the incentive, right? Versus the benefit that the community will experience from the location. That we're talking wages,
right?
Taxes from other sources,
right?
Sales tax, home ownership, and all that.
Yeah.
So the benefits are a collection of everything that's generated from that company location.
That's right. So whenever someone, so the benefit for the company, the incentive for the company is the tax savings. There's a dollar figure to that. When you try to compare the benefit for the community to just the savings, like, okay, so the company right now, our tax abatement is at 75%. So 75% of the taxes that they would otherwise pay for real and personal property is abated. They still pay taxes.
Right.
They pay 25%. Again, if they weren't investing, if they weren't locating here, they wouldn't be paying that 25% either. So that's a part of our benefit. And then those other things you just named, those things would not be happening. So trying to compare the offset of taxes to the benefit that the company is receiving, it's like apples and oranges. You're missing so much because it's the home ownership, the sales taxes, the donations that companies make through their corporations, through their corporate culture divisions, and so the jobs. Those individuals, and you talked about economic development earlier, John, and you kind of stole my thunder because I talk about the will of economic development. When a person has a good job, then they're able to take care of their family. They have kids. Now those kids are well resourced and they're going into the education system and they're learning. They're not worried about what's happening at home, and they're not, underfed and not taken care of. And then those kids are contributing back. And so they become our knowledge workers and become like a positive contribution to the community. And I call that the hard work of this, of why we get excited when we see people getting jobs, why our board, spends their time, unpaid time, contributing to this work. And John, why you've been doing it so long. Yeah.
Well, it gets in your blood, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
Sometimes I wish I'd picked another profession,
It's
pay-wise
hard.
anyway.
Yeah.
But talking to the benefits that the company gets, is it tied to the amount of investment they're making in the community and the wages they're paying and the type of company and the type of manufacturing? And
Right. So we have what's called a matrix, and that matrix determines how much benefit or how much incentive the company can get, how many years. And so depending upon their investment, the number of jobs, the wages they pay, we also look at the local spend. How are they contributing and supporting small businesses, and then where they're located.
Yeah.
So all of those things matter, and it's more of a science than people think. You're not just throwing, the dart at the wall and hoping it lands somewhere. You're really looking at how communities are invested, how they could be supported. Like you said, the companies are looking at, can they fill these jobs? So there's workforce considerations in there. And then, of course, the community development side.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the structure of EDGE. EDGE, as you mentioned, stands for Economic Development Growth Engine for Memphis and Shelby County. Mm-hmm. So EDGE is responsible for the incentives for the city of Memphis and unincorporated Shelby County. Mm-hmm. But the other 6 suburban communities in Shelby County have their own similar type organization called Industrial Development Boards. But EDGE is the big daddy, and we kind of follow, the other communities kind of follow the lead that EDGE establishes for everyone. And EDGE actually has the staff and the resources to do a lot of stuff that the smaller communities cannot do. But just so our viewers will know, if Bartlett, for example, if a company is looking at Bartlett and decides to locate in Bartlett, and then they want to know about incentives, then it's the city of Bartlett that gets involved in that. However, we do work with EDGE and a lot of times run these projects by EDGE for the cost-benefit analysis and all that. So there's a very strong partnership with the suburban communities and EDGE. Now, Gerre, you sit on the board.
Yes.
Joann, you're not a board member.
No.
But Gerre, you are, and there are, 7 board members? Is that right? Or
No.
Nine. It's nine board members and 2 liaisons, one from the city and one from the county.
Okay.
So 11 total.
Okay, so you're appointed. I mean, because some people say, well, where's the community involvement? Well, you are a citizen,
Yes.
okay, of Memphis,
Yes.
and you're appointed by
The city mayor.
the city mayor.
Yes.
So Jim Strickland appointed you.
Yes, he did.
And then you're approved by the city council. Is that correct?
The county commission.
Oh, they approve? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
And now the county mayor also gets to select some board members.
Right. The county mayor selects 4 board members, and the city mayor selects 4 board members, and then both the city and the county mayor select the chair.
Okay.
So, yeah, our chair is appointed by both.
Okay, and that's Al Bright.
Yes,
who's
that's
been
Al
in that
Bright.
position since Edge was started.
We call him the day one.
Yeah. So I remember Al. And in fact, I was somewhat involved in when Edge was getting started because Mayor Luttrell.
Heard, yes.
Oh, you heard?
I did. I heard from a birdie that you were involved.
Well,
in a good way.
Thank you.
Yes.
I've been around so long; it's hard not to get involved in a lot of things. But I think that's a good thing.
It is a good thing.
So, Gerre, why don't you explain to everyone here about what exactly your role is of a board member? I mean, you're the co-chair, right? So
Yes.
when Al Bright goes to the bathroom or he's not able to be there, you're chairing the meetings, right?
I am chairing the meetings, and I want to add something to what Dr. Massey has already said as we are having EDGE board meetings, and I think it's important for the community to understand. Even though we are a non-paid board, we are a committed board. We don't just go to board meetings and rubber stamp.
That's right.
Sometimes our conversation with businesses, even when they come in, are kind of grueling. And they're just as afraid in speaking to us to ensure that we're going to give them the approval that they need to move forward. Because I am vice chair and I'm that person, I'll tell everybody I'm always first out of the chute. I've kind of gotten a reputation for Jerry's going to ask questions. But that's not a bad thing because the economic side, as it relates to the community and the matrix that we have set, is important because you want the community to know and understand that you are approving projects for this community that will create home ownership, which will create economic increase, which will help children know that they can have, they can be, and they can do. So it's not just we go in and we say, yes, we're going to do a project. It's a process, and we take it very seriously, and we ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And John, if I can add to what Gerre said, she's right. It is a very committed board. Those meetings are consistent. They're open to the public.
Yes, they are open to the public.
Right. And John, you and I are public servants.
Yes.
You know, we work for the public. We
That's
work
right.
for the citizenship, and Gerre in turn represents that as a board member.
Okay.
So we would like for your listeners to come to the meetings. They can come. They're held at the Junior Achievement on Tillman every third Wednesday at 3:00. We won't keep you for long, and we'll give you water, no snacks. But it is open to the public, and this is, and I like to say, you know, not only being a public servant, but we serve the public, and we serve the public's interest in the work that we do. So it is really important, and everybody should be involved. You know, we think everybody should be an ambassador for Shelby County.
Absolutely.
Well, before we close this, there's another incentive that is probably a major enigma for most people. I know in West Tennessee because it kind of slow taking off. But there's another incentive called TIFs. The acronym is TIFs, T-I-F, stands for Tax Incremental Financing. And it's been used recently. Some communities in this county have used it more than others. But I know, being a native of Nashville and having relatives in Nashville, a lot of the construction that you see in downtown Nashville is actually funded through TIFs. Mm-hmm. So I know that I've heard people say, oh, well, Nashville doesn't use many pilots. No, they use TIFs. And TIFs are no different than pilots in that it is an incentive. The difference is the taxes are deferred for a while. Is that right?
Right. That's right. That's right. So I think, John, the biggest difference with the TIFs or the possibilities of TIFs and pilots that the listeners need to know is that TIFs are really generated by the investment from developers. So developers who see a community, see a potential in an area and choose to use that tool to create an investment opportunity. We have TIFs all over Memphis, and people have no idea. The developments they're seeing, like right up the street from where we're recording now, there's TIFs, and then there's TIFs, on the north side and the south side of Memphis, and like you said, other communities across Shelby County. But what the TIF really is where the investor is investing to improve an area. And that area, in turn, through the improvements, generates additional taxes. And so what's called the increment, the difference from what was to what is the savings, or the savings that the investor then receives back for their investment. So the benefit that they get is a portion of that. They receive it back for their investment, but they have to, on the front end, be willing to take the risk to make that investment. Right. So EDGE's role is an administrator for those TIFs, and we do take on a portion of the risk. We evaluate very, very closely the possibilities for a TIF and the successfulness of it. Yeah. And we have some really successful TIFs here. Again, the cranes that you see in downtown Nashville are not necessarily what we are going to see in Memphis in that way. But if you look around in Shelby County, Memphis and Bartlett and other communities, you could see the growth. Yeah. If you open your eyes, you can see the growth. Yeah. And EDGE is a major, major part of that. And we partner with the Greater Memphis Chamber and the Bartlett Chamber and others to make that happen.
Yeah, and TIFs have a lot tighter restrictions, really. I mean, there's only certain things that TIFs can be used for.
That's right. The public domain areas of projects is where TIFs are really focused on. And so it is about improving public infrastructure within the TIFs, not residential. So, people talk about apartments and stuff. It's not a housing tool. There are other housing tools, but again, all of that falls under EDGE's umbrella.
Well, we've just kind of skimmed the surface, folks, because there's a lot more we could talk about. And I know that EDGE is involved in a lot more projects to help the community grow.
I have to tell you about my exciting projects, John.
Well, I know, and I'm TIFs.
I know, we don't have much time. We got a little bit of time.
He's saying that you could, you've got 15 seconds, so go.
Well, okay. Liberty Park, North Side, the St. Jude expansion. I mean, these are exciting things, right? Downtown Memphis, 100 North Main after 17 years coming back. The Steric building, AutoZone. Go down AutoZone and see what's happening down there. We're a part of all that.
That's wonderful. See,
that was great.
Can't do it without, an organization like EDGE. So, okay, we're going to end it, but on a very high note, I just want very quickly y'all give your future forecast.
Future forecast
for the Shelby County.
The forecast for Shelby County is bright. We have a lot of projects that are going on, as Dr. Massey said, regarding pilots and TIFs. If you look around and you see growth and development, EDGE probably has a huge part of that. But not only EDGE, it's the suburban mayors, it's the chamber, it is our city mayor, county mayor, everybody working collaboratively to make sure that this is a Memphis that will grow and be sustainable.
Yep.
Great.
Shelby County is strong. Together, we're going to grow.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies. I really appreciate you joining us today. And I know we just touched on a few things, but maybe we'll have you back and do some more.
Love it.
That would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you again, folks, for joining us for this podcast. We want to thank First South Financial again for their sponsoring of this podcast. And we want to give a shout out to V2 Media, who produces it. So anyway, folks, appreciate you joining us and hope to see you next time. For the Bartlett Chamber, this is John Threadgill. See you soon.